Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Jaron Ennis and Custio Clayton are going to be the co-main this Saturday under Jamel Charlo, Brian Castano a fight. And let me tell you, this fight right here may be the highlight of the evening. And a lot of people may not know who Custio Clayton is because he's fighting out of Canada. But Jaron Ennis is not in an easy fight. And although he's made all of his fights look super easy and have really made his opponents look inadequate, although there were times where Jaron Ennis did take some unnecessary shots because he starts getting really comfortable and showboating a little bit with his hands down, and he's taking some shots. Going in there against Custio Clayton, he's going to have to be careful because Clayton can crack too. And we may see him have some success in this fight. But as far as Jaron Ennis, his intentions are to take over the 147-pound division because he's in now for a IBF Welterweight Title Eliminator. So now you're seeing what's happening. You have Mantis Stanionis, WBA regular champion, mandatory for that belt. Now the IBF's making somebody a mandatory. So Spence and Crawford are going to start getting some pressure from these mandatories if Spence and Crawford don't fight. And that's going to create problems, okay? But Ennis is looking to make a big statement as he comes out. He's looking to dominate the fight and get a knockout. And I think he needs to be careful trying to do that. And I'm going to explain all that here in a moment. But as far as getting ready for the fight, he said that he's feeling great. Camp's been going well. He's been doing some hard sparring. And he's just ready for May 14th. Now, Ennis and Clayton have a common opponent in Sergey Lipinets. We know what Jaron Ennis did to him. And Clayton and Ennis, I believe they went to a draw. But Clayton didn't do to Lipinets what Ennis did to him. But there's always the other side of the argument that Lipinets have been in some wars. He's been clipped several times. So now that he's finally got to Jaron Ennis, Lipinets wasn't the same person, same fighter. He came up from 140 to 147. He really doesn't belong in the weight division. And I say, okay, fair arguments. But Delerme got stopped, got embarrassed badly by Ennis. So we can't detract from Ennis being able to stop, from him being able to stop Lipinets and from him being able to stop Delerme. The bottom line is these guys are in there, they're good fighters, and Ennis is making it look really, really, really easy. And he feels like he's getting better, and he's just taking his time. And I think what he says is key, where he says he feels like he's becoming more and more relaxed in the ring, because that's what he's going to have to be fighting Custio Clayton. Because Custio Clayton is undefeated as well. He doesn't know how to lose. And we talk about, some people think the amateur pedigree, these fighters don't matter. It does matter. And to me, when you look at a guy's amateur record and the wins he's had, if he as an amateur is clipping, and it was clipping the opponents as an amateur that have turned pro and who have gone on to be undefeated and win championships, or who have gone on to be top prospects in the pro ranks, right? Then that speaks volumes about a guy like Ennis, a guy like Clayton, a guy like anyone who's a professional boxer and clipped a top professional prospect, but when they were amateurs. That's all part of the resume. Those are good talking points, and it's good when you're helping trying to build a fight. So when people are saying that the amateurs doesn't matter, yes, it does matter. Okay? Now, that's my opinion. Everyone has a right to their opinion, but I think it matters. So when it comes to that, Clayton, man, he fought for Canada in the 2012 Olympic Games. And this is something that we need to really think about, because we always talk about the amateur pedigree. And Ennis doesn't seem to worry too much about that. He's even gone on to say he doesn't study the tape on his opponents. He leaves that up to his team. And when it comes to the fight, he said, it's on me. So he trusts his team to develop the right game plan and strategy. Now, his dad is a phenomenal trainer, was a phenomenal boxer. And his dad has trained all of his sons and trained a lot of different guys out in Philly. So his dad's old school. So Jaron Ennis is doing a lot of, working on the treadmill underwater and still chopping wood. So he's still all about working on his core and developing all those little different fibers and muscles in his body that's going to make him stronger and give him more power in his punches. So he's already a heavy-handed fighter, but he's always working on building up the right kind of power. Not to go in and bench press 315, 400 pounds, but to be able to get a highly powerful shot off when he chooses to let his hands go. And that's why he says he's going to be looking for the knockout. But Jaron Ennis, he says, man, after this, he wants Spencer Crawford. But we know Spencer Crawford may fight. They may not fight. If they fight, they may relinquish the belt. Whoever wins is undisputed may relinquish the belts, go to 154. If they don't fight, Crawford or Spence may still relinquish the belts and go to 154. And Jaron Ennis said he doesn't care. He said if they relinquish the belts, great. He'll fight for the belts. He'll try to go on and become undisputed at welterweight. And then he'll go ahead and move up to 154. He said, so Spence and Crawford can't escape him for long. Now, Clayton didn't really have much to say. There really wasn't much I could find on Clayton in the interviews. But Jaron Ennis, it sounds to me like ultimately his goal is to get in that ring with Spence and or Crawford, or both, at some point in time. And them going to 154 isn't going to be something that stops him from achieving his goal. Now, the thing about this fight and about Jaron Ennis is he does a lot of things instinctively. And that just comes from training. So he doesn't even have to think when he's in the ring, because the muscle memory that he has from the arduous sparring sessions, the years of training, that's going to create huge advantages for him and could create some huge problems for Custio Clayton. Custio Clayton does a lot of things instinctively too, but he looks a bit more robotic and like he has to really think. Where Jaron Ennis, he's just in there reacting. Solid fundamentals, and something that he does that I think a lot of these fighters get this from Mayweather, is when they're using their jab to the head, to the body. And by doing so, and he throws extremely hard jabs. By doing so, it causes your opponent to become preoccupied with that jab and what you're going to do. And as a result, it opens up for Jaron Ennis to let go those big power shots, the big right hand, the big 1-2. And he's done that in every fight, and I can't see that being any difference in this fight, because they both have fast hands, but Jaron Ennis seems to be a bit longer, more loose. Clayton seems to be more of the tighter fighter. And I just think that's going to work to a disadvantage for Clayton, because being so tight and so quick to go on the defense, when Jaron is letting his shots go, it's going to be a bit more difficult for Clayton to try to counter, because when he gets tight, he gets super tight. And to let those shots go to try to counter him, it's going to be too late, because Ennis is already going to have taken a half a step back or stepped out on an angle. So that's something that going into this fight I want to point out with Jaron Ennis, and I'll give him the upper hand as far as getting the best in those exchanges. The other thing about Jaron Ennis, he likes to throw that lead left to the body. Once he starts getting you preoccupied, and then he throws his 1-2, and then he starts seeing that, okay, I can kind of open up a bit more, he'll just start throwing, like Mayweather would throw that lead right hand, straight right hand. Jaron Ennis will start to throw that lead to the body. And all of that is a result of him working that jab. Talking about Mayweather right now, there are a lot of fighters who I think have really especially these up-and-coming fighters, when you watch them in the ring, you could tell that people have been studying Mayweather and Mayweather style. Mayweather's, I'm trying to think, man, but Mayweather's one fighter that I've seen Broner try to do it. I've seen Mayweather, Gervonta Davis. I've seen other fighters do it, but Mayweather's the one that comes to mind when you talk about that. Someone throwing a shot at him, he'll stand in close with you and wait for you to throw a shot. He'll pull back just enough and then counter your shot with his right hand. Roy Jones was good at doing it too. So it's that pullback and counter is an amazing weapon that Jaron Ennis has, and that I think could create huge problems for Clayton. The other thing that Jaron Ennis does, Custio Clayton doesn't really do these things. He's more of a guy who likes to lead in with a hook and throw the big right hand, change the right hand he likes to throw from a high guard. But I didn't see anything with Custio Clayton like what I'm about to talk about, Jaron Ennis, who will just shoot that uppercut. There's what's his name? Vic Darchinyan, was that little small left-hander? He used to throw a crazy straight left hand, a crazy left uppercut. Zab Judah is probably throwing the best uppercuts that I've ever seen. He's known for leading with that sharp left uppercut. Zab Judah has thrown that left uppercut on numerous occasions, and most of the time it lands. Jaron Ennis will also throw a very hard, strong lead left uppercut. He can throw it from both sides because we know he's a switch hitter, and he's highly effective from both stances. But being a switch hitter in this fight, when he's switching, if he gets squared up, that's going to be problematic because Custio Clayton has an IQ to where he can time that. And most of the time when Jaron Ennis is switch hitting, especially if he gets comfortable, his hands are down. So when he decides to switch positions, Custio Clayton's explosive enough to where he can get to Jaron Ennis. And Jaron Ennis has been clipped before with some hard shots. Hasn't gone down, hasn't looked shook. But he goes in there messing around with Custio Clayton knowing what's on the line and what he has to do. I can see Custio Clayton fighting with a different passion. And I can see him catching Jaron Ennis. And people are going to be shocked because they almost seem like Jaron Ennis is untouchable. He is not. He has been touched in fights. Go back and watch him. But a guy like Custio Clayton, he's got knockout power too. And if any of them get careless, but in particular Jaron Ennis with that switching, and Custio Clayton can time it, he may have some success. Combinations. You know, Jaron Ennis, man, once he gets you going, he's going to open up with combinations, man. And if he feels there's an opportunity to get you out of it, he's going to press the gas, and he's going to let those hands go until you go down and the referee jumps in. And he has outstanding stamina. Get my glasses, man. When you talk about his stamina, man, it's not easy for a person who's not in shape to throw power punches round after round. And Jaron Ennis is a guy who will come out in the round and throw nothing but power punches. Nothing but power punches to get you out of there. Now, he won't come out in the first round or second round and do that. But once he feels that he kind of has his way with you, he's thinking, get you out of there. And this will create opportunities for Clayton, because when you're throwing uppercuts and hooks, straight right hands and different things, that creates openings and opportunities, especially when you're fighting in a shoulder roll defense, or you have this Philly shell, one of those hands are down, okay? And when you're doing that, and if you're throwing your shots and you're not getting out the way after you throw your shots, you just in position, you throw your combinations, and then when you get ready to reset, you come back to the same position, opposed to rolling out, stepping out on an angle. That's going to make him a sitting duck for Custio Clayton to time him. Lipinets had some success with that, and he hit him with a few big shots. I think Custio Clayton's IQ is a lot greater than Lipinets. I think he's a lot faster too. So Jaron Ennis has to be careful when he starts letting go all those hard power shots if he feels that he has an opportunity to get Clayton out of there, and getting comfortable when he's getting ready to reset by coming right back to the same position. He has to roll out after that last punch, or step out on an angle, but definitely have his hands up. And when he's out there in this, Mayweather, they call it shoulder roll, some people call it Philly shell. But when he's in that deep, goes right back into that defense, and he has those hands down, he's open, he's wide open for either left hook or overhand right hand. And Clayton can definitely get that off if he wants to. I don't know who was fighting recently, but there was some fighter recently who just kept his arm straight out and was pushing on the opponent's forehead. He was holding him there to improve his accuracy to get his right hand off. And the referee warned that person over and over. Just watched it like a week or two. I can't remember who it was. He had his hand on the opponent's forehead. Oh, it was Stevenson, Shakur Stevenson. He liked to keep that stiff arm out, and they used that as a way to, as defense, to control their opponent. So what that is, that's a defensive mechanism. You keep that stiff arm out on the opponent's forehead. So one, they can't see, and two, you're kind of controlling their movement. A lot of times referees will come and warn you, sometimes referees don't, and then sometimes referees will take a point. But what's his name? Jaron Ennis, he does that a lot. He uses that stiff arm, man. And what it is when they do that, you've seen Mayweather do it. You've seen a lot of fighters do that. They're kind of measuring you. And when you're not expecting it, boom, they'll let the big right hand go. Or some guys will throw a hook off of that. Some people call that the question mark, where you throw a jab out, bring it back halfway, and then turn the jab over. That's just called hooking off the jab, but some people call it the question mark. So by him having that straight arm out, it's not the same thing. It's not a jab. It's a stiff arm, but it's essentially the same thing. You get that arm straight out, then bring it back and turn it over quickly to a hook. But Jaron Ennis has a way where he uses that. So he's using that to improve his defense, and then he builds his offense off of that as well. We talked about him getting hit a lot. You guys better watch out in this fight, because Clayton can get to him. Now the thing about Clayton, if you haven't seen him, Clayton looks like K9 Bundridge. You guys remember who K9 Bundridge was? I don't remember which Charlo it was that knocked him out. But K9, Clayton has that kind of muscular build. He looks extremely strong, and he kind of reminds me of K9 Bundridge, the way he fights as well. Don't know if he has K9's chin, but we'll find out this weekend. But with Clayton, him and Ennis, this is going to be a battle of Ennis, who has a super fast piercing jab with the power being in that snap. But he will start setting his feet, set, and explode with that jab, hard jabs, top and bottom changing levels. Clayton has a super hard jab as well, and is highly effective. He throws it a lot. And once Clayton gets you occupied with his jab, if he can have success with Jaron Ennis, he'll go from throwing that jab high to low with his hands here to now bringing his hands up here, exposing his body to bait you in, and just shooting a straight right hand that's going to get there a lot quicker because he has it in this position. So he's just putting it straight out there. And if you're saying, okay, I'm not quite able to envision what you're talking about, think about Adrian Broner. Adrian Broner is the guy who walks you down, and it's almost like he's doing this. But that's what Adrian Broner right there, from right here, throwing that right hand out. He got that right foot, the ball of his foot down in the floor, like he's getting ready to take off in the race. He's pushing with that. So when they throw that right hand, they're pushing off of that foot and throwing that right hand out at the same time. It's extremely a short punch. It gets there quick, and it's very powerful. Clayton is a master of throwing that shot. He does that very well. I have no doubt he'll be able to get there on Jaron Ennis. I'm not going to say consistently, but he's going to have his moments if for some reason Jaron Ennis doesn't get him out there in the first couple of rounds. But the longer this fight goes on, the more you're going to see Clayton be able to kind of show the punches he has in his arsenal, because he has a lot. And I think those early rounds are going to be tough for him. But this is the other thing. We're talking about conditioning. I've been talking in videos a lot about conditioning, the importance of conditioning, especially with a guy like Devin Haney getting ready to go over there and fight Kambosos. Talked about Bivol and his conditioning and how that really played into the win with Canelo. But for this fight, Jaron Ennis worked more than anything on his conditioning. And that is key. That is critical. And so many times you see these front runners in fights. They're good for the first 4 rounds, and then they just fizzle out. But that conditioning has won so many people a lot of fights. And it's not because they were the better fighter. They were just the more disciplined, they put the work in. But you've seen that happen over and over in boxing. You see that happen in sparring, okay? But if Jaron Ennis was able to improve his already, I would say, superb conditioning, then it could be a short night for Clayton. Clayton can go the full 10, 12 rounds. He can do it. But going again a full 10 or 12 against a guy like Jaron Ennis, who's been able to improve his conditioning, I just have to say it just made his chances of winning that fight even less, in my opinion. But it's still a competitive matchup. All right, everything else I already touched on, man. About getting out of danger and counterpunching. But those body shots are going to come into play here, man. I'm telling you right now. Because these guys, both of them, at some point, are going to expose something. Clayton likes that high guard. He exposes his body. When he does that, he is going to get touched by Boots. Boots is going to rip to his body. He's going to rip to his body. Shit, I had this fan going the whole time. Man, probably ruined the video. When it comes to Jaron Ennis, he's more of, the shoulder roll, Philly shell, but he will start to try to walk opponents down and get that high guard up. When he was doing that against Lipinets, Lipinets started ripping him to the body. So it can work. That high guard defense, they both use it, but it can be, to their disadvantage if the other opponent can get his shots off and land to the body, effective shots. But it's easier said than done. But all in all, I'm gonna have to pick. I'm gonna go with Jaron Ennis on this. I just think Jaron Ennis, with the training up there with his father, what he's shown us in the ring, has proved to be an exceptional talent. Custio Clayton is a great fighter as well. Sound amateur pedigree. He's done exceptionally well as a professional. But going into a fight with Jaron Ennis, I just think Jaron Ennis may just have too much form. Too much form. And the reason why I'm siding with Jaron Ennis is because Custio Clayton looks like he's too stiff to me, too defensive-minded, and then he goes straight back. After he throws punches. And a guy like Ennis is just going to step with you. He's just going to step with you and let shots go. Power shots. And if Clayton didn't work on exiting out on an angle, he's going to get knocked out. And I'm not saying that trying to hurt any Clayton fans' feelings, but you can't go straight back in the ring against anybody, but especially a guy like Jaron Ennis. You got to use angles for those exits, those escape exits. You got to use angles, or you get in close, tie them up. You can't just throw your shots and then decide you're going to go straight back in a line. The guy just has to step with you and let his hands go. We used to do something called a 15-second drill. Just that's all you got to do. Step with him and let 15 seconds, just 1-2s all the way. Pop, 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 pop. The guy's going back. He more than likely will trip over his feet. You catch him with something, he'll go down. Or the referee will come in and whatever, especially catch him with hard shots. But that 15-second drill can put people down, especially when they're going back and if they lose their balance. Sometimes it doesn't really hurt the opponents, but it can get a knockdown that way. with a guy like Boots Ennis and what he's throwing, if Custio Clayton's going straight back, and Boots Ennis is letting them hard shots come for whether he's orthodox or southpaw, he's gonna hurt him. And I watched like 3 or 4 of Custio Clayton's fights. I didn't watch all of his fights because that's too much to watch. But that's something that I see him doing, man. Like, that's rookie stuff, man. You can't just go straight back. I don't care how good you think you are or whatever. Those are bad habits to break, man. And I just don't see him. I just don't see him coming in there and being able to present anything to Jaron Ennis. I think Jaron Ennis clips him, and I think Jaron Ennis will go on, and we'll see what they're going to do as far as him fighting Crawford, Spence, or, you know, I don't know what's next for him. But if he beats Clayton, I really don't know what's next for him if he doesn't get Spence or Crawford. Could be Keith Thurman. But anyway, man, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Leave your 2 cents, your comments below. I think it's a good fight, but I definitely think it's the Philly shell versus the high guard defense. And we'll see who comes up victorious. That being said, y'all keep safe. I appreciate the support. And I'm in the breeze.